Hello, you are listening to Pulseway IT Heroes podcast, a show for MSPs and system administrators.
Hi, and welcome to the IT Heroes podcast. And today we got Mr. Andy Elwood, head of product marketing, and Giri, our producer of the podcast and a product specialist here at Pulseway. So welcome, guys.
Oh, hi, good to be here, Ed.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
What's nice about it?
Nice to be on the podcast with you.
I appreciate you guys making the time. So today's topic is let's talk REvil. So have you guys heard of REvil before?
Yeah, I've heard of them. They've only been around since 2019. They seem to have been around a lot longer than that. But yeah, I've heard of them. One of many groups that we try to do our best to avoid coming across during the course of our day. Yep.
Yeah, like their victims and their attacks make themselves, known in the market. Though there are other actors, other operators on the ransomware, and these guys are quite popular.
So because their name is so famous, do you think they do it for the money, or do you think they do it for the money and the fame? Do you think they enjoy the publicity out of it?
Well, if you're after fame, you wouldn't do something criminal. I think it's mainly the money. So obviously we're talking about them because the FSB raided them in Russia, but they recovered something like, I have it written down here, they nearly $7 million in various currencies, 20 luxury cars. So they're definitely in it for the money.
That's for sure. I know you can make a lot of good money. I've seen some of those job postings on the dark web.
Yeah, so have I.
Developers, if they didn't have a good moral compass, maybe. But going to the fame thing, I mean, they're attaching their name to everything they do. So, I mean, if they didn't want publicity for their brand, why would they put down the REvil name and logo operation on everything they do, on their work?
Yeah, exactly.
I think they do that because somebody has to claim those attacks they do on the victims. They need to get them.
If I robbed a bank, I wouldn't want to put my name on it, would I?
Well, I guess I suppose that some people do. Bonnie and Clyde. That was robbing banks, getting famous. But I guess because REvil are a ransomware as a service provider, it's actually good marketing for their name to be attached to various attacks.
So that's what I'm thinking. Maybe for job opportunities, it's like kind of like, we know who Facebook is versus a company you might not know. So if you're in the space of this kind of business and you see a job posting from REvil and another company, you're going to attract more talent.
Yeah, but also, sorry, Gary.
Yeah, like those guys have affiliates and partners who they work along. So when they claim these attacks they make on the organizations, they may get more talents as well as some partners and affiliates to work along with them. So it's a collaborative act than a single individual organization taking the whole thing up.
Yeah, but as they've got this rather scary ransomware as a service model, they're after customers that want to pay them to attack. So now that your average cyber criminal doesn't need to actually have any technical skill anymore, they can just pay someone like REvil to do it for them. And so they are apparently the people behind the Colonial Pipeline attack, which I think was May last year, which led to fuel shortages on the east coast of the States. Shut down the pipeline for a week. That's a good bit of publicity, and they got money. Through a simple mistake. They're not. So publicity helps for their business. If they were like the old-fashioned type of cyber criminal, 5 years ago, who were doing it all themselves, then they probably wouldn't want the fame. But now they're trying to actively attract business.
Mm-hmm.
Then they probably do want the fame, but they're certainly not in it as a charity. They're definitely in it to make money.
So let's talk about a little bit, how do they operate? What makes them different from other ransomware operators, apart from just the publicity they get?
They're good. and apparently people who have analyzed their software say it's very good software, with very well written.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got there was that famous attack. It was what the WannaCry attack, was nothing to do with them in 2017. That was stopped because somebody looks at the code and it was like, well, if this website is up, then stop the attack. That means they've paid. Whereas the guy and then nobody had registered the domain, and that's a sloppy business. So this guy, a good guy, registered the domain, stopped the attack in 24 hours. They don't make that sort of mistake. They're very professional, because, you know, like anybody, like Pulseway, we want to produce good software because we want people to buy it. And if people, people complain about the software, they're not going to buy it. No one else is going to buy it from us. Same thing with ransomware as a service. If people complain because it's sloppy, I think they've got the experience, and they certainly have the skills and the attention to detail to not let things kind of slip and slide.
And so there's a thing about them. Obviously, they're very tailored. They're very professional. They're also, in terms of their approach, very particular in terms of best execution times, when to run this, when to execute this ransomware, when employees are out of office, and on a major holiday, when you have less resources to deal with it. So they're very tactical approach to ransomware. But there's also a thing about them double, or ransomware companies double dipping, basically. There's the first element is we encrypt all your machines so you can't work, and the second thing, we have your data, give us more money or we sell it, right?
Yeah, that's known as double lever extortion, apparently.
Yeah,
it is.
And they know. The other thing is REvil know the value of the data they're dealing with as well.
Because isn't there a statistic that if you were hacked once, your data could have been leaked, and there's opportunity for you to be, unless you do obviously some reinforcement and everything else, but they double sell the data on the dark web, so somebody else can potentially have a go at it.
I think they had this happy blog, the site of them, where they displayed and published these stolen data to the public, or say dark web. So that was like a repository where they had those encrypted and stolen data after the double extortion they did. So they operate in a different way. Like, they recruit talents. They look for young people because they would be more passionate to prove themselves, apart from the seniors who could be like affiliated or linked to some organization in one way or other. So they look for young talents, and I think they have a dev team, less than 10, based on the interview REvil representative gave to Cyber. Less than 10 people on the dev team and more than 10 on the pen testing team. So they are a very small group of members that contribute to these threatening attacks.
Yeah, and of course, some of these people don't necessarily, they're not exclusive to REvil. So I know they think they arrested 14 people in Russia, but the people have also been arrested at other times in other places like Kuwait, Romania, South Korea. So there's these skills are out there. The group might effectively be dead for the moment, but there's probably people with the skills who've worked with them that are kicking around in other places. And I'm sure there's adverts popping up all over the dark web at the moment.
That was my question. That arrest, so going to this arrest that finally happened, right? What portion of the group was actually arrested? I mean, out of the organization that is REvil?
Well, they raided 25 residences that were linked.
Mm-hmm.
They were working on information. Apparently, the Americans gave them, American intelligence agencies gave them names of the leadership. So I think it's probably the leadership. So they arrested they raided 25 places, but only arrested 14 people. But seized 20 cars, which could imply that there's more than 14 people there. So it's the Russians are claiming, of course, they would claim this, that it's now effectively out of action.
Yeah.
But but if people have had REvil related arrests in other countries, it could mean that there are, they're a modern employer. You work from home, flexible working, so they might not necessarily all be in the same place in Russia.
So this is the first time Russia took action on cybercrime that's housed in Russia, targeting US companies. What does this mean for the community as a whole of these hacker professionals? Should they be afraid?
I think after the major attack that happened in May, June, and July, so in consecutive months from REvil, I think US had to put some pressure on Russia, and that has been coming for a while now. And Russia needs to do something. And it's surprising yet seeing Russia acting on the request from Biden administration.
So this is one organization. So should these criminals be afraid, or is it, hey, 40 people out of 5,000 in the community for the first time, we'll take our chances? So does this mean anything? Does it mean that hackers are going to die down, or because the revenue they're actually generating and the growth of that revenue is enticing more and more organizations, and this is just a drop in the ocean?
I mean, this is a significant action on the behalf of the Russians, but there has been more. I think the world has woken up in the last couple of years, and so there's been a bit more international cooperation, because you do need to cooperate internationally to catch these people. So I think they might be, they might have had about half an hour of worry, and then they'll just get on with their day. It's always hard to keep up with these people. Any form of criminality, anything you do to prevent it, they will find a way of getting around it. So that, it's not going to kill it out by any means. It might slow it down, but there's enough people out there. There's enough people with the skills, and there's also other, what we would call rogue states, not implying Russia's a rogue state, but where there are kind of well documented hacking groups working kind of on behalf of the state. So so when you have state-backed actors, they have nothing to be scared of as well. So this is just one small, a well-known and unfortunately successful group that has been damaged at the moment. But there are other bigger groups around.
I guess this is where the reputation of them actually played against them, right? So they went for a huge play. But there's a lot of smaller organizations in the community who hack companies, demand ransom, who go unnoticed and unreported. I think around 85% of ransomware attacks are unreported because the companies are afraid for the brand to damage a reputation, that they were hacked. The data could be out there, it could be very damaging. So they go unreported, they pay the ransom, and they move on.
Yeah, and cryptocurrencies help that. So cryptocurrency has actually fueled this because it's untraceable. However, there was a ransom paid around $6 million, I think, for the Colonial Pipeline attack, but they've got most of that back. They're beginning to track cryptocurrency now back.
Yeah, so it's not
cut the money. That's where you do the real damage.
It's untraceable if you leave it in the account, but if you decide to take it out of the account, then all of a sudden it becomes traceable, because you can see an entry point account created, but where they're transacting, it's linked to an actual account that's tied to an ID. So I think the problem with, say, Bitcoin and everything else, you can extort it and keep it in your account, but it has to remain in your account for it to be untrackable. Now, if you want to spend that money, you'll have to extract it. Therefore, you'll have connections to your real ID and who it actually belongs to. So, it's safe, but not 100% secure if you want to transact that money.
Yeah, because I think Tesla is the only company I know of that actually takes cryptocurrency in payment. So there's only so many Teslas you can buy.
fleet of Teslas, right?
One thing about the payment is like when the companies pay the ransom, these guys, they don't get the ransom directly to their accounts, say it be cryptocurrency account or somewhere. They have this common hub from which, the overall ransom will be distributed to the entire team, including the affiliates and distributors. So they have a separate team for negotiation, for handing over the decryption key, and so on. So they do not like work on a single unit basis. They have multiple unit basis. So that's why the tracking and stuff could be like quite vague.
Though, however, there's something I've just seen here that, so what the REvil people in Russia were charged with was actually a quote illegal circulation of means of payment. And some people are reading in to say that they've been charged with money laundering as opposed to any hacking related offenses, which is something that is not quite clear as I understand it at the moment.
So the government's missing out on the cut of the tax, right?
Well, yeah, that's exactly.
That's interesting. So they weren't committed because of hacking and criminal activities. It's just money laundering.
Legal circulation of means of payment. Nice phrase. I don't know how that translates from the Russian.
Did they set a term how long they potentially serve in prison?
Then you've been charged. They haven't been convicted.
Okay. I wonder if they can bribe their way out of it. There's another thing I was looking at is the cyber insurance. Is that, making the problem worse?
Well, I suppose it could make people, in a way, it could make companies complacent, thinking, oh, well, sure, if I get impacted in any way, I've got insurance to cover that. But as anybody who's tried to claim anything on insurance knows, there's no guarantee you'll be covered. So it could actually make the targeting easier because people think they don't need to bother with defenses because they've got insurance to pay for it, forgetting that the cost of this type of attack isn't just monetary. It's I've seen figures that something like 70% of consumers would stop using a company or stop buying from a company that's been the victim of an attack. So there's all the reputational damage that the companies are forgetting about because they think insurance only covers the actual financial cost. So it's make them complacent and sloppy a bit.
But these insurance companies, they have professional negotiators as well, like cyber extortion negotiation resources that negotiate on your behalf if it happens. So they reduce the fee, but their go-to is to settle for the fee, but reduce the initial asking price, to maybe 10% of the original asking price. So it's kind of fueling the money in the area, I guess. I mean, the more we keep paying people, obviously cyber insurance, it's good for them as well. More attacks equals more people buying cyber insurance, more it's required as well as a standard. The premium's gonna go up if it's the same across any industry where insurance plays a part. The more attacks, the more ransoms, the higher the premium for the cyber insurance, and it's gonna become a necessity for some industries.
Yeah, although I think technically the CIA's advice is not to pay any ransom, but they know that people do, and they kind of go, yeah, okay, we understand. Because certainly in Ireland and other countries, they keep trying to limit the amount that you can claim for injuries on car insurance because car insurers are kind of fueling the kind of inflation in the cost of injuries. Yeah. Which is putting premiums up. So yeah, you're right that could apply as well. So on one hand, it's going, oh, we'll get paid something, which means they will just ask for 10 times more than they want because they expect to negotiate down to 10%.
Yeah.
The people without insurance will end up paying it because they think that because they're worried about their data being leaked. So I think over half of ransomware attacks now include data being stolen, not just locked. So that's because that's a bigger threat. And I believe something I saw the other day, healthcare is the biggest sector that's been impacted.
Healthcare, yeah. Healthcare. I assume it's like old technology. And this brings us to the next point. what should companies must be doing to protect themselves from this activity?
So it all starts with the phishing, so first thing is emails. You need to drop some very good security protocols for your emails. You need to adopt some security best practices to ensure your employees or users or clients are aware of what to do on the email etiquettes or something. So that will prevent the first level of breach into your network, followed by patching, taking care of the vulnerabilities. In an article I read about REvil breaching a network within just 3 minutes, just because of that is one vulnerability that's available inside the network. So a single vulnerability and a phishing email, clicking on those attachments, that has some macros that can execute the commands to encrypt and lock files. So they all just need less than 3 minutes to breach the network and take over your devices. So first level is like phishing, security, and vulnerability management.
90% of all attacks start from phishing, and that is the go-to strategy, right?
The only way to protect yourself is to get rid of all your staff, because humans are the weakness.
Delete your emails, fax only, right?
Yeah, non-digital.
Non-digital mail, but then somebody can steal your mail and forge. I mean, that's what they used to do, like send you invoices, and like this technology evolves, so the methods evolve. So, I mean, 90% phishing. I mean, there's a lot you could do to prevent that. Andy, do you have any recommendations?
Well, there is still an astonishing level of ignorance, because people wouldn't be phishing if people weren't falling for it. So there is, it's still, I think, training and an understanding of the issues is very important, and it's something that people are beginning to kind of take seriously, but it's taken a long time coming. Phishing simulations, I've been caught out by phishing simulations in the past in previous companies. They certainly bring the message home. I've heard of companies where if you fail so many phishing simulations, you get the sack. Now that's possibly slightly too harsh, but it's, they're going, this person's a security risk, we don't need them here. So you don't want to be, that draconian, but it might actually be that type of approach. So training definitely there, and also trying to, a lot of people mistake, particularly with email, think, oh, phishing, I've got email security, but this email security was written in the 90s, before phishing was a thing. Some of this legacy stuff, I could have added things to it, but really, they weren't really designed for. They were designed for picking up bits of malware, whereas phishing isn't malware. It's just language. It's English or whatever language you're speaking. And so you need a way of being able to cleverly identify potential emails, whether it's, there are, and it's matching, what's the normal traffic? Does this person normally get emails from this person? Does this person normally send emails? Do they send emails at this time? Do they send emails from this place? This is unusual. This, trying to find suspicious things. Apparently there is, when you get asked stupid questions at airports, randomly, like, is this your suitcase? Things like that. These are security questions that have been primed to help people, help the staff at airports identify suspicious travelers. And I think that we need to do something similar for emails. And it's like, are you traveling alone? Are you sweating? Was the ticket bought yesterday? Do the initials on your suitcase match the initials on your passport? All these kind of things, that's why they ask you these stupid questions, to get you to speak, to make sure you speak, you sound like you have a British passport, and all that kind of thing. And I think that type of approach is probably what we need to build up on, to identify what these suspicious emails are in. They're not malicious, they're suspicious. And I think that people should be investing in that sort of technology to help, because you're trying to protect the users. There's only so much training you can do, but the combination of the two things is what's needed.
Yeah, and I could really
is the emergency, the fear they bring out of the emails, transaction-oriented emails, which I know urge the receiver, recipient to click on those links or open the attachments. So they even clone the top vendors like Microsoft, Amazon on the delivery side, or Microsoft's notification or something that triggers the users to open and think those mails are legitimate.
Yeah.
So having a good modern system that blocks emails or flags emails that seem a bit odd, because it can come from your internal organization. It can come that looks like it's someone that talking about the subject that you know about. So flagging some of that, and secondly, and I've spoken to system administrators, IT directors at organizations, and there's this conception that why would somebody click that? I wouldn't click it, right? So they believe like all the users are as tech savvy and understand the landscape like the IT director or system administrator, right? Well, I don't think people would, but I'd encourage why don't you do a phishing simulation and see, and you'll be surprised. Common sense isn't that common a lot of the time, so you'd be surprised at the percent of your staff that are going to click on something that they shouldn't have clicked on. And I think the average was, when initial tests, up to 5-7% of employees who were not trained clicking on malicious emails during these phishing simulations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's as you say, common sense isn't common, and there is that level of surely this is obvious that you wouldn't do that, but it's obvious if it's your job to spot it. But also, like this morning, I had 121 emails in my inbox, and a lot of them were just being copied on messages and stuff. People have full inboxes and they don't read things properly. They'll look for, there's the CEO, there's an email from the CEO that might be important, which is a fantastic spearfishing kind of
the
thing.
way it's written is can you check this finance sheet and make sure it's accurate, right?
Yeah.
And it could be it's set like later in the day when you're more tired, when you're less diligent about it. So a lot of like percentage, like less in the morning and more in the afternoon when you're a bit more tired and you're paying less attention to what's going on. So I mean, they're just well tailored emails that just seem, and we think about it. It seems like common sense not to click something silly, but it doesn't even look that silly. But if people weren't clicking it, there wouldn't be a ransomware business to begin with, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. There wouldn't be a business, but also it's this behavior doesn't necessarily is not just linked to IT and technology. I know of a case where somebody changed job. It was a friend of ours' daughter changed job and wondered why she hadn't got paid on her first paycheck. And she went to HR and they said, "Oh no, we've changed the bank details as you asked us to." She said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you sent us a letter." And so somebody had spotted from her social media that she was changing job and was going to start on this day, and this was going to be her new job. And they just wrote to the HR department of this company, who just took this letter as legitimate, to say, "Oh, I've changed the bank account details from the ones I gave you on the form last week." That's very much an analog version of what we're talking about. So it's behavior it's criminal behavior everywhere, not just the IT, but it just magnifies the problem.
Yeah.
Yep.
So going on, I know we're kind of running out of time. Any final thoughts on it, on the subject, on REvil as a whole and this industry?
I think REvil is making enough money. They made enough money, close to $100 million US, or let's say billion rubles recently. I think after this arrest, we should see less of REvil in the market. There shouldn't be anybody else, but probably we may not be sure, because considering only 14 members are being arrested, there could be more. And when REvil was having this, Sadino Kobe, the ransomware name, which happened in 2019, I suppose. Then they had this Grand Crab, both were shut down, and REvil came up again. So this could be a pass or a full stop, but we may not be sure about that yet.
If anything you said there, like they made 100 million, anything that's going to do, and they're going to see the arrest 25 luxury cars, X amount of millions confiscated, it's going to give inspiration to other criminals too. I was like, I want to make that. I mean, it's the same across any kind of crime syndicate. It's what is going to serve as a catalyst for more ransomware groups to take over REvils space.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I'm sure there are contractors working around in this space like they are in normal IT, legitimate IT operations. And as you say, we've seen the salaries that are being advertised on the dark web for these people. It's like, oh, okay, I can just do this for 2 years and I don't need to bother anymore.
Yeah.
It's a dent. It's a hiccup for them, but it's certainly not the end of the road for this type of organization.
It's like any other crime. The only way this would ever end if people just stop paying money. It's the same with the drug industry. If people stop buying drugs, then the gangs wouldn't make money, and then it ceased to exist. It's a similar thing. I don't think it's going to stop until they can't get money out of it.
Yeah, and the JBS Foods that paid the ransom amount of 11 million, and there has been a case in Baltimore as well. So unless organizations restrict themselves from paying those ransom that is demanded, this could be like a repetitive loop or something.
Mm-hmm.
But as organizations become in the last decade, the technology is ubiquitous, and it's now even small organizations are reliant on it in a way they weren't before. They can't afford to be out of action for any period of time, so they can't risk, almost in a way, not paying a ransom, because they need to keep running up and running, because there's a lot of e-commerce, a lot of service firms, a lot of things like that. So so I think the reason why people pay is because before 30 years ago, if somebody attacked the IT system, that's fine, you can still work quite happily, but these days you can't, and I think that's a big issue as well. So there needs to be the days of running a paper backup system. Nobody's got the time to do that, but everything's in one place. Or two or three places you have backup, but you're still relying on technology in the end of the day, because people literally cannot afford to be without it anymore, and that's a big issue.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining today's conversation. It was a pleasure, and we'll see you guys again in 2 weeks.